Welcome, listeners. Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey.
Hello, everybody.
Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality. And it's a radio show that broadcasts on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley in British Columbia from CIVL. And CIVL is located on the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation. The show is also a podcast on all the major podcasting platforms. And so if you are tuning in for the first time and you really like the show, you can find other episodes either there, or if you go to drlesliephillips.com, you will be able to see all the past episodes. Now, the show broadcasts on a Tuesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Pacific time. That's the time slot that it goes out on the airwaves on the radio, but we pre-record the show a week in advance. So that means that we can have a live audience. If you want to be part of the live audience, then join the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group or follow my YouTube channel and show up on a Tuesday at 7. And
sorry, Dr. Leslie.
Yes?
Apparently, they say you're mute on Facebook. You've got your microphone cut off on Facebook. You got a little microphone up top and it's off.
I see that.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Tracy.
Yes. I might have to go out and come back. Oh, okay. I think I've done that.
Yeah, looks like it's gone. Okay.
We'll start again.
I just continue. I'll cut. Yeah, start again.
Again, yeah. Facebook has changed a few things, which is a bit of a challenge. I have to be this way rather than this way. All right, let's start again. So this is what happens when you're in the pre-recording studio. Welcome, listeners. Welcome to tonight's edition of Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey.
Hello, everybody.
Tonight, we're going to talk about what happens after death. Is there proof of life after death? And so that's an exciting show. We always talk about something in the realm of metaphysics and spirituality. Before we go into the content, I need to tell you that Unlocking Your Truth is a radio show that broadcasts every Tuesday from 7 to 8 Pacific time across the Fraser Valley on 101.7 FM from a radio station called CIVL, and CIVL is on the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation. We also put the show on all the major podcasting platforms, so you can find it there. And all the back issues of the show are on my website, drlesliephillips.com. The show goes out from 7 to 8 Pacific time every week. And here's a fun fact. We pre-record the show a week in advance. That means you can be part of the live audience. How to be part of the live audience? Join the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group or follow my YouTube channel. And then you get to watch us recording the show. You get to ask your questions. You get to join in the chat.
Yes.
So tonight we're talking about what happens after death. And I thought, to talk about that, we should probably start by saying, well, what is life and what is death? And from my perspective, there's just one eternal existence. One eternal existence. So life and death, in a way, are human concepts or concepts of a physical being that doesn't live forever in the physical vessel. So I want to start with some truths that perhaps we can all identify with to help us explore this topic. I'm just going to make a statement and follow along with me and see if you agree with this statement. I exist. I exist in the present moment. I exist in the present moment, vibrating with energy that attracts my reality. I am part of all that is, and all that is within me. So I'm sure you all was like, well, I exist. Yes, I exist. Yep. I do exist. Here I am existing in the present moment, here and now. At least if you think of your body, where is your body? It's here and it's now. It's like, have you ever not existed? Not to my knowledge. I've always existed while I've been conscious. And has your body ever been anywhere else other than here and now? No, it's always here and now. And then we get into the law of attraction, you know, that you are a vibrational being, you are an energy being, and you are constantly putting out an energy signature or an energy frequency. And those of us who are into this spiritual stuff know that the universe is based on reflection. And so we get who we are reflected back at us. And I am part of all that is, and all that is within me. We are all fragments of divine consciousness, unique fragments of the one consciousness. So apart from that, everything else is changeable and everything else does change. Whether we're saying, I change from one incarnation to the next, or whether we're saying, while I'm incarnate in a body on earth, I'm constantly growing and changing. So change, cycles of growth and change is also an underlying truth of our reality. So nothing stays the same apart from I continue to exist, or I seem to. I'm always in the present moment, or I seem to be. And my life is a reflection of who I am. And whether I know it or not, I am God. So let's look at now what humans think about when they think about death and life. So what we call life as humans is living in the physical, in a physical body, in the physical reality of Earth. That's what we say life is. And what we call death is leaving the physical body and leaving the earthly realm. That's what we call death. We therefore exclusively validate life through our physicality and our physical beingness. So a dead body that's not animated by spirit is a mystery to us. Where did they go? What happened? And when we see a dead body, someone's passed away, we wonder if they still exist. And it's one of the big questions of humans have had throughout the ages, and have created all sorts of belief systems around it. All religions and many non-religious groups have created beliefs about it. If you're an atheist or an agnostic, you might just say, well, you're alive and then you cease to exist. If you're a Christian, you could have a belief in heaven and hell and perhaps resurrection. If you're a Hindu, you believe in cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. And there are other belief systems. So there's lots of belief systems on the planet. And if you come into this world and end up belonging to a religion or become a scientist, then you end up with a particular belief system about death, don't you? And you sort of have to hold it on faith, because how do you know? How do you know? You know you exist, right? You know you're here and now. You know that nothing's ever changed that for as long as you've been conscious, but how do you know these other things exist? And we'll talk about that in a minute. So, and interestingly, many religions have a belief about resurrection or reincarnation. Probably most of them do. The Hindus, I believe the Muslims and the Jewish faith as well has a version of that. And even the original Christian teachings, there was teachings of reincarnation. And throughout the ages of man, we've tried to guide people. That's what the Egyptian Book of the Dead is. That's what the Tibetan Book of the Dead is. Guiding people through the death process, what they need to do, what might happen, who they might meet along the way. It attempts to describe the death process and navigate people through it. So, what do you believe about death? And I welcome anyone who wants to write in the chat, and we'll talk about them later. But what do you believe about death? Have a think about it and jot a few notes down, because remember, you create your reality through your beliefs. And this is true about death. And it's true during life and death as well. So what does that mean? That means that you can create your death experience according to the beliefs that you are holding. Reality is a projection of your consciousness. So if you have certain beliefs about death, that might be your immediate experience when you die is exactly what you're expecting to happen because you're believing that. It also means your beliefs about death, that it could be a determining factor in your next life. It could be, and your beliefs can set a certain trajectory that continues on in the afterlife and into the next incarnation. All right. So I'd love to know what you all believe about death. And also any experiences that you've had to do with death. Who you known that died? What was that like? So to answer the question, what happens after death? I believe to some degree it depends on the individual and their beliefs. I believe perhaps you might initially get what you believe will happen and what you expect to happen. I even created a little mini workshop around this. On my website, there are these little mini 2-hour workshops called Akashic Adventures. And one of those Akashic Adventures is called the Between Life Akashic Adventure. And there are 3 half-an-hour long meditations in that workshop. And one of the things that we do is we move into a meditative state, we move into an intuitive state, and we look at, it's called the 7 heavens exercise. We look at the last 7 incarnations and the death experience of the last 7 incarnations and what that person experienced after death. And it can be a very revealing exercise to do, because what you find is you see yourself in different lifetimes, holding different beliefs, and entering into a completely different death experience depending on the beliefs. Now, so there can be a phase which is almost like an illusory phase. I don't think this happens to everyone, right? Or I'll explain what I mean by that. Where, you find yourself in whatever view of heaven that you expected to be in. And that can be a kind of illusory experience that eventually your guides will come and help you transition out of that. Now, when I said I don't think that might not necessarily happen to everyone, and it, again, maybe it does because it depends on your beliefs, but there are people who find themselves out of their body, and knowing that they're dead, but still being in the world, you know, or people who find themselves outside of their body and they don't know they're dead and find themselves in the world, right? So what happens immediately when you die, it depends, and it's not the same for everybody, and it's not the same for every lifetime that you live, I believe. So let's talk about the transition out of the body. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to make that transition between the physical world and the non-physical world. Whether you're on the way in or you're on the way out, it takes an enormous amount of energy to move either from the non-physical into the physical or the other way around. So if you've ever been in the room with a dying person and you're sensitive to energy, you might have noticed that the energy is palpable. The energy is very high indeed. It has to be, right? To fuel this process. Often death can be a very peaceful thing. It doesn't have to be awful. It's a natural process. But so there comes a point when the person's energy is released from the body. And to a sensitive person who's in the room, when that happens, you can feel it. You can feel that person being released into a higher vibrational state. You can feel their high vibration energy and their presence in the room. And so I was going to say something else about that. Before death, the person does start to withdraw their energy from the body. And that is also something that depends on the person. It could be that it starts to be a few days before. It could be a few weeks before. It could be months or a year before. If you just think about the people who are having Alzheimer's or another neurodegenerative disease, their consciousness is withdrawing over an extended period of time, right? Versus someone who has a sudden death, where a sudden unexpected death. So the souls can start withdrawing energy from the body and from the life days, weeks, months, or years before. The body can stay alive. You just think of the people who are in nursing homes. Oh, my gosh, I've been nattering away. I have to go to a break. I'm being told. All right, well, we'll pick that up in a minute when we get back after the break. Welcome back to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie. We're talking about death, at least my perspective on death. And what I was saying is that the soul can start withdrawing energy from a particular life. It can be a sudden thing, or it can be a protracted thing. And often what will happen when somebody is looking at leaving, they will send messages to their relatives through dreams, or even they might start to have a feeling that death is coming. They might feel protected about it. It's a natural process. They might start saying, you know, I don't think I'll be here for much longer. So there is a leading up to the death, which is different for everyone. Everyone's death is unique. Everyone's life is unique. Everyone's birth is unique. And then we have the point where we come to transitioning out of the body, which is an energetically palpable and powerful experience. And then we have what I think of like a kind of separation. When you have a rocket ship that takes off, it drops off part of itself, doesn't it, as it leaves the atmosphere. So you can kind of think of, we slough off the earth suit, meaning we slough off the physical body. But you know what else we leave behind? The personality. The body personality is like a suit we wear. And the troubles and the pain that we were in. That's why if you're open to it and you're not too programmed about the grief of death, death can be a very happy, joyous experience, because this person is emerging into a higher vibrational state of being and is being truly relieved from what they may have been going through. And then in that time afterwards, there might be visitations, you know, then they might visit relatives to let them know what's happened. People might see them in their dreams. They might have waking visions of them, and so on. So Corey had his hand up. So
yeah, thank you for letting people know I put my hand up. This is a topic, you just touched on something there I wanted to mention. This is a topic that people shy away from. Death is not a conversation piece that people participate in. It's feared. It's this. I think we have a friend who's called him Dr. Death, and he facilitates workshops to allow people to talk about death. And you know, it's strange. It's just another transition, and we're so afraid of it. And I think it's a good thing, especially as you get older, to entertain conversations about death, dying, what you feel, how you feel, just because keeping that's like it's a very strong emotion, and you're keeping it inside. And I think it's something, it's got to come out.
The physical body's biggest fear is death. Spirit doesn't mind, you know. I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out. But the body is very frightened by it. So I'm just going to go through the different stages of death. So we've said we transition out of the body. It's a very energetically powerful thing. We separate from the body, and our whole earthly persona. Because if you come back in a different lifetime, you're not exactly the same. You don't have the same personality, right? And also leave behind the troubles and pains that you were carrying up until that point. Now, there is a thing called a life review that also happens. And I know when my mum passed away, these are reflective of my experiences when my mum passed away. She came and told me in a dream a year before it happened. The energy in the room after she passed away was amazingly high. She spent weeks after she passed away just running around visiting everyone that she possibly could, because she had motor neuron disease, and so she wasn't able to move around for the last 6 months of her life. So she was just delighted to be able to move around again. And then the other thing that happened was she had her life review. And so a few days after her death, I was aware of this happening, and I witnessed her life review. And so she would show up to see me, and each time she would show up, she would be a different age that she had been. You know, mum at this age, mum at that age, mum at another age. And so all of her life was being reviewed and passed through. And so your entire life is relived very rapidly. And this time, you're not only seeing it from your perspective, you're seeing it from a higher perspective. And you're seeing how all the other people that were involved in the different situations, what their experience was. So you have a complete surround sound experience where you learn from all angles the lessons of that lifetime. And then, you know, you're moving into a broader, wider, more expanded, more multi-dimensional experience. And so you can still be around for loved ones, but you might go and learn some things. You might explore some things, have some different experiences. I know once my mum showed up in the guise of a heron, blue heron, right? So, but it was her and it was her energy. I mean, a vision of. And so you know, it just, everyone is unique. And then, of course, we have the reincarnation experience. And some people turn it around from our perspective of time really quickly, you know, and other people maybe not so quickly. So that's my perspective on what happens when we die. I definitely believe in reincarnation. I've spent the last 25 years doing past life readings for people. But like I said, it's like you, if you think about this life that you've had, and I'm existing and I'm existing, I'm in this experience and I'm in this experience and I'm existing and now I'm in this experience. There's an eternal spark that's experiencing that. And right now it's experiencing it through this body and this personality. That spark is underpinning a different body and a different personality. So you don't take your personality, right? Now you may, when you come back, if you've left a legacy of unfinished business, as you come back in, you might put on part of the old earth suit, bring it in with you because you are wanting to continue on that theme. So I hope you found that interesting. I know some of you have been sharing your thoughts, and so I'd like to open up to see what some of the people who are listening live have been saying about their beliefs or experiences.
So May on Facebook says, I know life continues.
Yes.
So she feels quite firm about that.
Yes.
It's good to hear. And the next one is from Brian. And Brian says, this is from earlier though, is that why some people seem to recover almost like they're getting better prior to dying, the energy coming in for that transition?
Yeah, that's interesting. And that did happen with my mum, actually. And it's almost, it gives an opportunity for them to say their final goodbyes in a way. So at least when I witnessed it with my mum, that part of the experience was not the same energy as in the room when she actually died. But she did have, I mean, I think that's quite common that it's medically documented that there's this spurt of energy that can occur, and it seems like maybe somebody's getting better. You know, suddenly they have an appetite or want to participate a bit more. And I don't know whether it's a physiological thing that's happening in the body as well. So I don't really know the answer to that one, but I don't think it's exactly the same as the high energy that I'm talking about when the transition actually occurs.
I know when my mother passed away, I was with her. I was the only one in the room with her, and she was sort of like laying there, almost I'd say asleep in a way. And then she just opened up her eyes. She looked at me, and it was weird because it was a look like, do I have your permission to go? Can I go? You know, like, and then she just let her breath out, and just calmness, like you could feel the energy just shift. It was, she was gone.
Yes, a friend of mine had a similar experience. Her mum just opened her eyes and said, "You have to let me go now," and went. Yeah.
It's interesting, you know, like the different experiences that people have with that, and again, it's tough. It's tough to face it, but yet facing it is a necessary thing in life. I heard today somebody I know passed away, and it was just it was like, it's not a shock, but it's just, it makes you think, you know, it makes you think.
Yeah, I also heard today that somebody passed away, didn't I? One of my cousins
Yeah,
passed.
your cousin passed away.
Oh,
Huh. And-
right on
and-
time for the show.
right on time. Yeah, we're
How's that?
surrounded. Actually, two people I know passed away this past week. Um, this is from Karina. Karina says, "Yes, we are programmed to fear death." She feels we're programmed to fear death.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? We're programmed in different ways about death. So, I mean, in a way, like I said before, fear is almost like an innate, hardwired thing in the physical body itself. Because a physical human body is, it's got, in a way, a level of its own consciousness, you know? It's a pretty amazing organism that does amazing things in its own right. And it's, you know, it's faced with ceasing to exist in the form that it's in. So there's a natural, I don't know, well, let's call it natural for now, kind of fear like that. But then there is a bunch of programming. And some of the programming is physical life is better than death. Stay alive at all costs. If you die, you failed. If somebody's ill, the only healing means that they get better. And it denies that somebody in the death and dying process can do a tremendous amount of healing that they benefit from, that they take with them when they go. And it's not a failure because nobody gets out alive. We all pass away. And then there's programming about how you must behave when somebody dies. You must cry, you must wallow in grief, and maybe feel ashamed for things you didn't do or didn't say. There's lots of programming that we have. And so the two people that are closest to me that passed away, one was like my grandmother and my mom's mom. And the energy around her death was so powerful, and she was so happy. She was so happy to be dead. And again, her energy was like visiting everyone, and I picked up on it. And there was so much joy and so much love. I couldn't help but feel the joy and love. And I remember once being in a group of people who were talking about death, and they were all very, very depressed. And I said this, and they all looked at me like, you are there's something wrong with you. But no, I'm just tuning into the energy of it, you know. And and the same thing with my mom, but there is we celebrate birth, but we don't, well, I guess we do sometimes celebrate. We celebrate people's lives, don't we? Yeah, so
True.
there's programming about being in mourning and how you must behave and how you're supposed to feel. And most people do feel, and I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not critiquing that if you feel grief and things like that. I definitely felt grief when my mom died, and I also felt so much love. It was amazing, that relationship between grief and love. When you grieve deeply, you know how much you loved. So yeah, grief is genuine, and there is an energetic separation that's going on. There was a physical body that you knew that was in the world with you, and there were many connections between you, and the relationship is changing. The relationship is changing in a really, really big way. And so if you're somebody who is into this metaphysical stuff and you've done a lot of healing on yourself, then you can free yourself to have a different experience of it. If you're your everyday human, then, and you have no notion, all you know is you've lost someone, they're not there anymore. And so for sure, there is a grieving that happens. But yeah, depending on the culture we're in, depending on the religion that we're in, we're programmed to behave in certain ways around death.
I think death, like talk about fear of death. I think death, regardless of where you are in life or where you are with a person that you know is passing on, I think a lot of it has to do not with the fear of death per se, but the fear of dying, which is different. I mean, the fear of death is one thing. The fear of the unknown, or nothing from beyond this or what's beyond here. But I think also the fear of the process itself. I think a lot of people fear the process of death. I know for myself, I don't fear death, but I fear the dying part. You know, like, getting sick or pain or something along those lines. You know, it's the process scares me a little bit.
There is legend of the shamans of old who would keep their body healthy right up until the end. Then they would know it was time to go and then just step out of their body. And I believe that that's possible for us.
Oh,
but
definitely.
our modern era, there's a tremendous amount of suffering through illness. And I guess because of the advances in medical science and the perspective of life at all costs, and people live longer and they stay alive with what's the word, things where they wouldn't have been able to stay alive perhaps in the past. So yes, there can be suffering in the death and process. So
Time for a break, Dr. Leslie.
for a break, we'll come back to more of your questions after these messages. Welcome back, everyone, to Unlocking Your Truth, where we're talking about what happens when you die.
Yes. Very
The other
much
thing
so.
I haven't talked about, and I'll just mention here, is, if you search on this topic and you Google NDEs, you'll find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who have maybe medically died or got very close to death, and who have had experiences of going down a tunnel, getting to light at the end, communicating with different helper beings and that kind of thing. All right, what's our next comment or question?
Okay, the next one is from Karina. Karina says, can soul stop reincarnating?
Well, I'll answer it the way that I think you're asking it. Can souls stop reincarnating on Earth? Yes. Can souls stop reincarnating in physical reality? Yes. Can souls stop evolving and changing? That's the nature of a soul, to evolve and change and expand. And I want to answer it in another way as well. Actually, it's all happening all at once. So in a way, there's not a progression. There's all of you everywhere all at once, having different incarnations and different experiences. And in some sense, we might say that we're on an evolutionary pathway where we came from God, and then we are over, from our perspective, enormous swathes of time, working our way back to merging with God. At that point, there isn't any change, because God is everything. So when you become everything, in some senses, we might say no change is happening. And then there's a sort of stabilizing, because now you are at one with everything. I think I'll stop there. But for want of going too far out.
Yeah, it's well, you're allowed. It's your show. Do what you want. Okay, the next person's information is Zachary. Zachary says, I feel a very strong Palladian connection, other lives or even a current one.
Totally. And, like I just said, it's all happening all at once. And so you could think of a Palladian incarnation as a kind of future incarnation, but actually it's possible for you now to connect with and communicate with aspects of yourself that are incarnated in other realities, including realities that we, relate to existences in other star systems. So sure. we all have incarnational experiences in other star systems. So I'm sure you do have Palladian counterparts.
Wonderful. This is from Zachary as well. He says, when my mom passed, I heard John Denver's Annie's song for 3 months, day and night. It was special.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know, it's funny because I also heard a song when my mum passed away, and I've actually forgotten what the song was, because it was, I had to decide what songs to play at the funeral, and I wanted to play this song, and everyone was like, that's completely inappropriate. You can't play that song. I have to choose other songs.
that was something, though. The
I
choosing of the song.
know.
This is from Brian. Brian says, I have a sort of related question. The topic about being outside the body and not knowing that they're dead reminds me of ghosts. But what are residual hauntings, where somehow the environment has recorded some event, sometimes something as mundane as getting a morning cup of coffee? people see it and it seems like a ghost, but there's no consciousness, no interaction. It's like watching a recorded movie and it just replays under certain circumstances. What are they? How do they occur?
I have a few different explanations that all could cause an experience like that. One might be something to do with the energy of the location, and it literally is a recording that's replaying because the, I don't know, the particular energy in that location is conducive to that. Sometimes we leave parts of our energy behind in particular places that perhaps we've been through something very emotionally charged in that place. And so that can be an explanation. When we pass away and we slough off, you know, so let's say you're somebody who's done an enormous amount of healing. When you die, you've not got that much to leave behind. But let's say you're someone who hasn't done an enormous amount of healing, and there's a lot of unresolved angst, I don't know, resentment, different emotional things, then you kind of leave behind a kind of shell. We could describe it as a kind of thought form. It's not imbued with spirit, but it's like an energy coalescence or imprint of that person's stuff that almost seems like it has a life of its own. It could be something like that as well. So there's different explanations for that type of a thing. So yeah, thanks for that question, Brian. Hopefully that answered it. Yeah. And then it could also be, another explanation could also be a person's astral body, right? A person's astral body is, that's something we didn't talk about. The astral body survives longer than the physical body. So somebody can be utilizing their astral body for a while after their physical body has passed away. So, and actually, whether someone's alive or they've just passed away, you could maybe tune into that astral body doing something. So there's about 4 different explanations.
Pick and choose the one you want.
Yeah.
I'll go from there. Okay, the next one, where was I? It's Brian. And May says, May, I had an extreme fear of dying because I feared it would be incredibly boring.
No,
I'm sorry.
it's not boring. Oh my God. So here you're in time and space, you know, and you're moving through linearity. But you enter into an explosion of multidimensionality. So you're actually, there's a lot more going on rather than less. And you can do things that you can't do in a physical body. If you want to go and visit the Pleiades, well, you can go there. If you want to hang out with a flock of birds, you can do that. So I don't think it's boring. I think just start imagining now what you might want to do. But if you, remember what I said, May, if you believe it's boring,
it will be
you
boring.
might create that experience. You might be there going, until your guides come and rescue you.
There's also what's his name that wrote Conversations with God? I never remember it. Neil Donald Walsh. He said in his book on death, the 4th book he wrote, was that whatever you believe, you'll see. He says you'll go down. He says you're going to go down to it's like going through a hallway, and you see all the pictures of your life, and that could be your review, your life review. If you believe that in heaven and hell, well, there's going to be a choice. If you believe in like nothing, well, after this specific life, you'll have nothing until your reincarnation. And I
Yeah, so
I always thought that
sounds
was a
like
good explanation.
he's saying the same
Yeah.
idea.
But I like the idea of the hallway going down, seeing pictures of your life as you go through your own personal museum. So this is from Brian. Brian says, I have a sort of relate. Don't know he. We already asked that one. Did I lose some here? No, I'm okay. Brian says, he says, I hear you, Corey. I was always concerned with dying when I was younger. Didn't want to suffer.
Yeah. I don't think any of us do we?
No, suffering doesn't sound too great. This is from Denise, or sorry, Dennis. And Dennis says in it, I think it's Dennis. Let me just check to make sure. Dennis Borden. Yeah, oops. Sorry, Dennis.
Dennis always has really interesting questions.
Dennis says, in a normal death, does the onion peel from the inside or outside? I see what you mean. Okay, Dennis.
The death of an onion or a person?
Be lots of tears.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a funny question.
Well, it's a good question, though.
Well, okay, so Dennis is, I guess, imagining or believing that the human being is a series of layers. And so I don't personally tend to think of it that way, but that sounds like what Dennis is thinking. So maybe he thinks, well, there's the physical body, and there's the astral body, and then there's the light body, and then there's, the Buddha body. And so the thing is, they're not like layers of an onion, they're all interpenetrating. But like I said, the physical body will die first. The astral body will stay around for longer than the physical body. And then eventually, that will go as well. So I guess there are stages of separation and release. If you want to tell us if you want to name the layers of your onion that you're thinking of.
Well, he does. Well, he names his onion layers. I have another one for Brian. Brian says, I believe death used to be more accepted as a part of life. Centuries ago, people kept skulls on their desk. People were laid out prior to their burial in a family home rather than a funeral parlor, that kind of thing. And the Irish, that was the Irish. They used to have that, and so was the reason they could party.
We've sanitized death, haven't we? We've sanitized death. But I mean, I know from my own experience, the hardest part of my mum dying, which really surprised me, was I couldn't bear to separate from her body. Like, she died at 4:30 in the afternoon. And, and they said, well, no, you've got to phone the funeral parlor and get them to collect the body. And I phoned the funeral parlor, but I was like, no, you can't collect the body. I couldn't bear for her to go. And so they said, well, you don't have to, and she can stay overnight with you. And so she did, and they came to get her the next morning, and that was the most heartbreaking part of it for me, was watching that part happen. But yeah, they did, didn't they? They used to stay with the body longer. And then there are traditions where they mummify the body in Central and South America or in Egypt, where they even bring them out in Central or South America there are civilizations where they bring them out, that the ancestors, for celebrations, and feed them and give them a drink and put them back.
I think I draw the line there, though. Well, Dr. Leslie, this is almost the end of the show.
All right. Well,
we've had some good comments.
Yes, thank you everyone who came and participated live. It helps make the show more interesting to have you here asking your questions.
Dennis says his
onion rings.
His onion. Okay, he says the physical, mental, energetic, and at last at least two other layers.
Okay, so physical, mental, emotional, etc., etc.
Yeah. Zachary says, remember Yogananda kept his body like in a sleep for 10 days.
Oh, I'll have to look that up and read about that.
Yeah. Well, folks, if you enjoyed the show, please give us a like, a thumbs up, whichever you're on. And that's it. See you next week.
See you next week for another exciting topic. Remember, you can always send us suggestions for what you'd like us to talk about.
And shock somebody this week. Have a conversation about death with them. Bye-bye, all.